Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's Fourth Space. Thank you for joining us for today's event, part of Open House 2025. From Concordia Undergrad to Concordia Grad, a journey of growth. Just to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube live from Fourth Space, and we are located here on unceded Indigenous lands in Tiohtià:ke, Montreal. At Fourth Space, we work with our university community to help mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions and projects in development across the university. We're running today's event as a live stream Zoom meeting also, so we welcome comments and questions there. Just add those to the chat and we can read those out later during the Q&A. And also for those of you joining us here in the space, if you have a question, just raise your hand, we'll bring a microphone over to you so that everyone can hear. Okay. It's now my pleasure to hand it over to our moderator for this afternoon, also graduate student ambassador and PhD in business administration, James Peters. James, it's great to have you.
Thank you for having us. So welcome everybody to our talk on Concordia, going from undergrad to grad. So one thing that all four of us have in common here is that we are all Concordia lifers. So we've been here since our bachelor's through to our master's or PhD program. So starting with Anna over here, I'll just allow everybody to introduce themselves.
So my name is Anna Baez, and I did my undergrad in biochemistry, and then I moved in to do a master's in biology with a researcher at Concordia, and I fast-tracked to a PhD, and now I'm doing a PhD in biology.
Hi everyone, I'm Tristan Mancini. I did my undergrad here in marketing, and then I'm now in my second year of my master's in marketing, and I'm happy to be here.
My name is Lee Byrne. I did my undergrad in physics, and I'm currently in my first year of master's in physics as well.
Sweet. And as Douglas mentioned, my name is James, so I'll be the moderator today. I did my undergrad in pure and applied math, and then my master's in supply chain, and now my PhD in supply chain management. So just to start with an opening question, I wanted to ask the panel, what made you choose Concordia in the first place? So the first time you applied for undergrad, what were some of the things that went into your decision? And yeah, tell us about that. Maybe we'll start with Lee.
Why not? I have the mic. I think when I first chose Concordia, it was mostly because of the co-op program. I don't know that any other university had that going on at the time. And I felt like going into sciences, having that opportunity to do research in the summer and have that support would be beneficial for my future. So I think that was the main component for me.
Absolutely.
My situation might be a little bit more unique because I was in the athletics here. I played football here. So essentially for me, I had a couple schools that were talking to me, and I ultimately decided Concordia. One, because they offered me, again, the co-op program. But also when I visited the school, I really liked the atmosphere, and everyone was very friendly, and that really just made my decision easy, and I chose Concordia.
So same thing for me. I did the co-op program, and it was a great decision because I got to do 1 year of R&D at a company, and that is what made me choose to do a master's in research and now a PhD. And also as well because I'm an international student, so between the two English universities, that's the only university that offered it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that co-op and athletics, there's a lot of reasons that can draw you to Concordia. And what might be interesting is kind of how that was mirrored, or maybe not so much, in your master's and PhD application. So I was wondering, could you guys talk a bit about the differences between the undergrad process of choosing a school versus the master's or PhD, the graduate level?
So I'll start because I have the mic. But between undergrad and grad, I'm in science, so basically I did my undergrad in biochemistry, and then because a master's is more in research, so you need to really look into the professors, and the school is kind of like, it goes to a second plane here, because the most important thing is that you like the research that you're doing. So I looked into the professors a lot, and I found someone that I really like their research in cancer, and I decided to go to their lab. But also something really important is that you like your environment. So I really recommend kind of looking into the other students and talking to people and making sure that it's the vibe that you want to go for, right?
Definitely, I want to second that point of the vibe or the environment. For me, I chose Concordia in the first place for my undergrad because I love the environment. So when it was time to choose if I wanted to do a master's or not in the first place, I wanted to continue my education to keep playing, of course. So for me, it was an easy choice. I loved my experience as the undergrad. The students were great. The professors were great. So I figured, why would I change that for the next step? And it's been great. Made a lot of friends along the way, and all these professors are now contacts that we've become close with. So yeah, it was great.
I'm in the sciences as well, right? So I think we had probably similar priorities for our masters or for grad school. I mean, compared to the other places I had visited and the other supervisors I had spoken to, I think what sold me for Concordia was mostly just the connection I found with my supervisor was just almost instantaneous. I mean, I felt right away in that initial meeting that we would work very well together. Yeah, I think there's a difference between a professor that you might like their teaching style during your undergrad, but then for them to be your direct supervisor, you're going to be working with them a lot more. So to be able to differentiate between them just being a person you like or them being a teacher, an instructor you like, and them being a supervisor you like, it's a big difference and it's an important one.
Absolutely. I think that a really big difference between choosing a school for undergrad and choosing a school for master's or PhD is really that emphasis on research that everybody has mentioned here. How important it is to find a supervisor that you connect well with and find maybe a lab if you're in the sciences that aligns with what you'd like to research, right? So I think everybody's mentioned that the importance of research and finding a school that fits your research interests as well as a school that has the faculty to fit your interests. So we all mentioned the research aspect, but are there any other differences that you guys noticed between maybe your course load in an undergrad versus graduate? Like, how did you manage the time? You know, a lot of us maybe have some imposter syndrome going into it. Did you feel any of those feelings? Or, you know, maybe talk a bit more about the day-to-day changes between undergrad and grad. And I don't know if maybe Tristan, you wanted to start that one off?
Since I got the mic now. So I think one big difference is the type of workload you're doing. So in your master's program, you're going to have a lot of reading, a lot more kind of research papers that you're going to read. So you have to devote your time that way. And beyond that, you're also going to have very, very small class sizes, about, you know, 15 or 20 students. So I think it's great because you get to build these relationships not only with all these other students, but also with the professors, since they get to know you personally. As far as the imposter syndrome goes, I think it's normal to kind of feel like you might be out of place in the beginning because you're going from Concordia undergrad to grad. It feels like this huge step, but it's important to understand that, you know, everyone's in this together, and maybe everyone's feeling this in the beginning. So that's why you just want to talk to the people around you, and you'll see that they're just like you, and it'll just go by great.
So same thing to add to that. For biology, it's very different. It's not course-based. So basically, I jumped in from a course-based program, which was my undergrad, to a research-based program, so thesis. And I like it a lot better. It's a lot more self-driven. So it's a lot of research, a lot of organizing yourself to make sure you do your experiments, but nobody's telling you what you have to do every single day, right? So you can organize yourself to basically what you feel more in the day. Like, let's say today I don't really feel like reading. It's okay. Like, you can go to the lab and work on something else. So I do like that aspect. For biology, we only have to take 3 courses for a master's and then 1 course for a PhD. So as you see, it's significantly less. So, and the courses are different. So there's no exams. It's more of like more towards reading articles, presenting towards developing those skills, which are way more valuable for later on. So what else? The difference, I guess, apart from the course side of things, is just that like self-driven work. It can be dangerous for people that don't really have those time management skills, but I find that one of the reasons why I stay at Concordia is because they have so many resources. So they have grad pro skills, which really just help you in anything, like to develop those time management skills. If you need help, they truly help us out. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, self-motivation is a skill that I think every grad student needs to learn, and quite quickly. It can be tough to, because in undergrad, I mean, you have all your assignments to do. The workload feels a lot heavier, but at least you have constant and consistent deadlines, and your professors are checking in on you, and it's a lot harder to kind of forget and lose track of time and everything, right? When you're in grad school, it's really all up to you. You have to hold yourself accountable for your own deadlines that you've created. So I think that's been the biggest difference. And you described the courses quite well. Even the course, apart from the course load being lighter, the actual course content is also geared more towards research. And it's nice being able to focus all of your attention on one course and really understand what you're learning, instead of taking 4 or 5 courses in your undergrad and just surviving. So it is a big difference. It has its pros, but it's not to say that it's easy either. The imposter syndrome is definitely something, I think, like you said, I mean, everyone struggles with it, right? It's this weird phenomena that somehow everybody feels it, yet everybody still feels it, right? But I think talking to your research group helps a lot, right? Because there's always going to be some senior members, even postdocs maybe, depending on the research group. So talking to them about it will help a lot, because they'll tell you how they felt, and you'll notice with each year that goes by how much you're learning and how much you're becoming the person you thought you were supposed to be when you started, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. I think that there was a lot of really good points that were brought up there, especially the flexibility. I think that that's one of the things that could kind of go from a blessing to a curse in a sense if it's not managed properly, right? In grad school, there is tons of flexibility, right? You have flexibility in the courses that you want to do, in the papers that you want to write, in the research topics that you want to study. And so there is a lot of flexibility, but at the same time, that really opens the doors, and there's almost a difficulty of narrowing things down or focusing on one thing at a time is also very challenging, right? A bit of juggling going on between all the different jobs going on, or the hats that you're wearing. Now, I to that point, I wanted to talk maybe a bit more about the concerns that you might have had going into grad school. So if you could put yourself back in your shoes of in being at the end of your undergrad when you started applying, was there anything that you were worried about? Like, flexibility sounds like a great thing. It could also be a little daunting. At the same time, going into research could also be quite daunting, especially if you're coming from a course-based program. So were there any concerns that you had, or anything that you were nervous about or worried about going into grad school? I know for me, it was definitely the research that had me a little worried, because I came from purely theoretical course-based classes, so I didn't even know where to start with that. So did you guys have a similar feeling, like, or maybe talk about the concerns and difficulties that you had when you're facing grad school?
Yeah, I can lead us off. I think I kind of felt the same way as you, James, in the part that I had never done research-based courses or research in general when I applied for my grad courses. So to me, for one, I was like, oh, am I going to know how to do this? Am I going to be good at this? What does this even consist of? What is this? And for anyone feeling this right now, I just want to mention that, you know, you're not alone in that, and the professors understand that, and the courses are geared towards you learning the basics first and then go more in depth. So as far as being scared for the research, I don't think that you should be. Going back in time, I wouldn't have put so much stress on that. And then secondly, just finding a professor to work on a thesis with. I think that's very scary because you wonder how that relationship's going to go. And if I could give a couple pieces of advice, it would be to really treat it almost like a job interview where you want to understand how they work, how you work, their personalities. You want everything to match because, for example, if you get a professor that likes to micromanage and likes to check in every day, but you're someone that likes to work independently, then even if you get along super well with this professor, it might not be the best partnership for you guys. So I think it'd be very important to really dive deep into that partnership with your professor to make sure that it runs as smoothly as possible.
I think, yeah, I mean, what I was most concerned about when I first started looking at grad school was how to even find a supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I took almost 2 years off in between my undergrad and my grad school, so I had a lot of time to find a supervisor. But that first year was like just sending 50 emails and not getting a single reply.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it can be very discouraging and concerning. But I mean, during those 2 years, my priorities shifted so much. I was still in contact with a mentor, a professor we did research with during my undergrad here at Concordia. So I was still talking to that person a lot, and they helped me kind of re-navigate those priorities towards something more manageable. Because at first, I found I just wanted to do something cool and flashy in physics, you know, and go to a big fancy university just based on reputation, all of these things. And I mean, you kind of realize that joining one of these big, famous, huge research groups might not be the best for everybody, because then you're stuck in a scenario where your supervisor has 20 grad students, so they don't have time or money to properly support any of them except for maybe 1 or 2 key students, right? There are all these things that no one, unless you ask, no one can really tell you. So that was the biggest concern. But then shifting those priorities back towards not what I thought I wanted, but what I actually need for my career was a big help, and definitely alleviated all those concerns.
Yeah.
So I actually had some of the same concerns. Like, I came to Concordia and then I was thinking about staying in Concordia, but it's that mental dialogue of do you want to stay in the same university, or do you need to even to be a researcher, do you even need to change to something more like more reputation based? But I kind of realized that I'm an international student, so I did build a community here, and that was one of my like big important things, just like keeping that environment. So that's one of the reasons why I stayed, apart from the research. What else was the question?
Yeah, just any of the concerns that you might have had going into it.
True. So the imposter syndrome it's a thing. It's a big thing. And I even had research experience before. I did 1 year of R&D, but just starting any project, it's kind of, you don't know if it's going to work. In science, a lot of things are just, I mean, you try your best with your cells, but biology is biology. It's just, sometimes it doesn't work. So it's sort of, oh, it's my project gonna even be viable? What do I do if I've spent 2 years doing this and then it doesn't work and I have to shift gears? Those are things that are always concerning. Then also coming into a lab where you don't really know where things are, you kind of have to know that everybody's there to help you and that they're actually encouraged to help you. And even your supervisor, one of the things is perfectionism. So sometimes I see myself like, oh no, I want to do like a trillion replicates because I don't believe what happened here. You know, like you can only do things a certain amount of times, and at some point you do have to believe what you get, right? And that was one of the things, but they're there to guide you and to sort of ground you. So That's one of the things I really liked about my lab is the support, and I wouldn't have gotten that any other way. Like, I saw a lot of people in big labs, big names, and sometimes you're just doing technician work. Like, they don't even plan their own experiments. They don't get all that experience that I'm getting. So it's pros and cons, right? Like, I get to do every step of the process because I sort of created my own project. Like, there was that flexibility, and I really enjoyed that. Other concerns, finding the supervisor, I find that email. After you email a trillion times and you get no response, like, I just went knock on doors, you know? And that's pretty effective when you're just there. They sort of have to answer. So, yeah, I would say there are some concerns always, but it's very doable, and at the end of the day, everybody has their same concerns. So,
Yeah, that's a great point, and I think especially with the supervisor debate that we were all talking about, I just wanted to plug our past talk that we had, so you can check that out on on YouTube. Sorry, but we do have a talk about finding a supervisor and how to go about navigating that. But I think you all kind of touched on that supervisor concern, and I think that's a very real concern walking into grad school. And at least what I could say for the side of JMSB, because I don't know if it's the same in the other faculties, but for our programs, we don't, especially the PhD program, we don't require students to have a supervisor beforehand, which is nice in a sense as well. So if anybody's considering our business programs, then you have that advantage where you could kind of ease your way into the program and then see who you want to work with. So there's advantages like that. On the other hand, I think that finding a supervisor beforehand, it could also be great because it allows you to establish this connection beforehand, before you start, lock it down, and know what you're walking into, right? But just as Anna and Lee and Tristan also mentioned, you don't know exactly what you're walking into until you face it, right? So even these concerns, even though they might feel very material at the time and very real, I think once you enter the program, I think we could all say that we really eased into it smoothly. And sure, we've been here since our undergrad, but I think that every program is different, right? You start your master's, it doesn't matter what you did before. It's still a new chapter, it's a new thing. So I think that all of us were able to kind of integrate easily into that. Now I wanted to kind of take it back again and just talk about maybe a little more of the technical side of things, specifically the application and interview process. So certain programs might have required you to do an interview, but I was wondering, could you guys talk about your application process? When did you start looking at schools? Any tips that you might have for somebody who is looking, and maybe more on the technical level, so really in terms of preparation.
I can start off. My experience was a little different because I came from undergrad. I took a class with my professor, and then I sort of talked to him and I expressed my interest. And after you secured a supervisor that wants you to be in their lab and they have space, and if you don't have a very, very, very bad GPA, it's really simple. Like, the application process is just, it's even simpler as undergrad. I find that the system is a lot better, and you just go step by step, add a letter of intent, and your supervisor puts a letter of reference and expresses their interest, and then it's just really straightforward from there. Yeah, that was pretty much it.
Straightforward, yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to second that. I think Concordia has a pretty great program when you apply that makes it very easy to just go step by step. As far as the business programs go, I think a couple pieces of advice I could give is, for your letter of intent, I think just stay true to yourself. They want to know about you and why you want to do this program. So I wouldn't worry too much about that. As long as you're just being true to yourself, it'll be great. And then the second part, maybe the one that stressed me out a little bit during my application process, was to find some recommendations. They asked for 2 to 3 recommendations for the business programs, at least for the applications, and I didn't really know how to go about with that or who to contact. So A tip for that, I'd say, is just think back to your courses. Maybe go back and think of some professors that you really enjoyed your courses. Maybe you built a little relationship with them. You did well. And just reach out to them and see if they'd be willing to help you with that. They want you to succeed as much as you want to succeed. So most of the time, they'll be very open to just giving you recommendations, just as a boss in a job would. Or any other connection you have. So just don't be scared to reach out to these people that you've had good rapport with.
I'll even add on to that too and say that in terms of references, like most professors have written a letter of reference before, they know what to write, and if they don't feel like they're confident in writing you one, they'll just be honest. They'll just tell you straight up, like, no, I don't feel comfortable writing you a letter of reference, which is okay, because you don't want a mediocre letter of reference, right? You want to make sure that whoever's writing it can write you an excellent letter of reference. But to go back to the question, the application process, yeah, super easy. I mean, especially I think that's one of the benefits of having to find a supervisor before your application, is that once that supervisor is secured, the application is incredibly simple. And yeah, I mean, I had one conversation with my supervisor. I think I was past the application deadline already, and the whole department was like, meh, that's fine, don't worry about it. Still apply, we'll figure it out, you know? So I ended up having to apply for the following year, and then once I was accepted, they moved my start date to the year prior. So there's a lot of flexibility, not just in terms of your own research and your own ideas and stuff like that in grad school, but even the administration becomes flexible somehow.
Right.
So I wouldn't worry too much about the application procedure if you're not tight on a deadline. Obviously, I took 2 years off. I was not in a rush to go back. I was excited to go back to school, but I had no concrete timeline. I had the privilege of being able to take my time with it. But I would say don't stress too much about the application process. Maybe focus more on doing each step in order, right? If you're required to find a supervisor first, make sure you do that first. I wouldn't start an application before that. Even if it means you're going to be late, I would go so far as to say you're better off applying late with a supervisor. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think, Anna?
I just want to add that I guess it's different for us because we're research-based programs. But if you're applying to psychology, for example, it's extremely competitive. So I would truly go for the guidelines and make sure you do have the supervisor. Because even sometimes when you secure a supervisor, if they're doing the clinical psychology program, there's no space. Even if they are taking people. Something else is that for international students. So I was an international student. I did have an issue. So I applied for my master's. I got in. Everything was fine. But I took a break in between. And I had a work permit. And I thought that because I had a permit, I could continue studying. But that was not the case. So I had to defer my application because I didn't have a study permit. So make sure that all your documents are in line because this will truly set you back, and it's an issue because you have funding, but then if you're getting kicked out of school because of documents, you don't have funding anymore for a bit. So make sure that all your documents are in line, and make sure to ask the ISO because that's what they're there for. Otherwise, everything is fine. And something else, if you're applying for masters, take into account that for funding, so FRQ, if you're starting off cycle, so in the winter, you're not going to be able to apply to those funding opportunities that are external. So I would look into that as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of the funding usually happens at the beginning of the school year, right? Like September, October. So that's true. It's a very good point to bring up. Now, just kind of on that note, did anybody have interviews going into your programs, like master's or PhD, like a panel interview or anything? Because I don't know, did you at least maybe for your PhD?
I mean, I guess meeting with your supervisor is kind of like an interview where they truly gauge if you're gonna be good for the lab or if you are in line with what they are expecting or want. But also when you're in the program, you start having committee meetings and you have to meet with other supervisors that are gonna also examine you. So that's something that maybe we don't have courses, but we do have committee meetings and we do have to teach as well.
Okay, yeah. So there's definitely some different aspects,
Yeah.
right? Depends on the faculty, the program. Okay. Yeah, did you have any interview?
I mean, no formal interview as
Okay.
part of the application process. I interviewed a few professors that I was interested in, but that was just like a, hello, how are you?
Right.
I'm interested in your research type conversation, right? It wasn't any sort of formal interview process. I think for most science research programs, there's no application interview because once you have your supervisor, as far as anyone else is concerned, you're in.
Okay, I see. Yeah, so maybe that's why, the reason I was asking is because in my experience, at least with the PhD in business program, we did have like a formal panel interview. And I remember hearing about that and not knowing really what to do to prepare for that. I was like, should I talk about research? Should I talk about, like, what kind of aspects do I touch on? And when I went, and I was expecting fully for it to be a very academic interview, it ended up being totally personal, right? Like they were asking what my interests were outside of school, maybe what my aspirations were after the program or what I was working towards, sure. But it was less technical than I was expecting. So I think that kind of is an important thing to remember going into any program is really that you, first and foremost, you're there because you want to be there. You're there because it interests you. And that is what you have to offer. It's what you're bringing to the table, your drive, your passion. Those are the things. So it doesn't always come down to grades. It doesn't always come down to the technical things. A lot of the times it really is just, why do you want to be here? And they take a holistic approach in that sense. Tristan?
Yeah, I think I just want to touch up on that, and I want everyone to understand that it's a two-way relationship with any interviewer, any application process. It's not just you as a student that wants to be in this business program. You also have to understand that they want students, strong students. So to really highlight that, your interests, your skills, how you can contribute to this program that you're applying to, it is very key because they're looking for contributions. They just don't want anybody. They want someone that can bring some type of benefit to their program.
Yeah, 100%. Now, I see, so we've got a couple minutes left and then we could turn it over to the audience for any questions. But I just wanted to finish off with one final question, kind of a two-part one. So like on the one hand, if you could kind of summarize your feelings, like what is the one characteristic or the one thing that you really love about Concordia? Maybe we could start with that, but I'll just give you the second part of the question, which would be, what parting advice do you have? We touched on so many topics today. It would be hard not to repeat any of them, but what kind of parting words do you have for any students who might be considering Concordia for grad school, undergraduate students who are here already or coming from abroad? So on the one hand, what's that one fundamental property of Concordia that you love, and what would you say to a prospective student?
So I would say the support. I feel very supported, even in the times where I'm not motivated or I'm not maybe just up to doing research. Like there's those times where my experiment fail all over and all over again. Every time I go into my supervisor's office, I just come out with a smile and be like, okay, everything's gonna be fine, And there's a lot of things in science about like publishing or in just, you don't have as much experience, but you always, with like all the support that they offer, like they support in writing, like grad pro skills, like I've learned so much and you slowly feel more comfortable. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, I think the thing that I love most about Concordia is really the atmosphere, the environment. I've touched up on it a little bit, but everyone is really here to help you, whether that be with all these services we have or with anything you want to do as far as extracurricular, any questions you have for professors. Everyone's always open to having a conversation and helping, and it creates this really great, healthy environment that I think is one of the main benefits of Concordia. As far as any parting advice that I could give is essentially just don't be scared to reach out and do a little bit more. Get involved in all these extra programs, extra activities. Get some help if you need help in a course. Reach out to these tutoring offices. Everyone's here to help, and to make your university experience the best, you really want to reach out. And if you're thinking of applying to grad school, it's not too late to try and take that next step, that next activity. So just don't be scared to do that.
And it sounds like what we love about Concordia is all pretty similar. I was gonna say the community, really. I mean, even like on a micro scale and a macro scale, both the whole university community is so wonderful. My department community is so wonderful. The faculty community is so wonderful. I mean, and it's this idea too, which I respond very well to personally. I mean, I'm not competitive at all. And I feel like everyone I talk to and everyone I interact with is so much more focused on collaboration instead of competition. And especially in academia and in research, I feel like that's so beneficial. And it's so important to be able to lean on your peers and help them and be helped by them instead of constantly thinking someone's out to get you, which I feel is, I hear a lot from people, my colleagues at different universities who are a part of different communities. So I think that's probably what I appreciate most about this school.
Yeah, you all brought up very similar points, but I think that speaks to just the truth behind it, is that everybody does feel that way because it's true. Like, Concordia is a very tight community. It's a big university in terms of population. We have a lot of students, but it's a small university in the sense that everybody is so close together, and you interact with so many different people. You pass thousands and thousands of people every time you walk through the doors, and there's not a single person there who won't have your back. Like, it's very much that really tight community. And just in the spirit of maybe offering another advantage to Concordia, or one of these characteristics, I find that Concordia is also a very forward-thinking place, which is a great place to do grad studies because it feels like everything that you're doing is relevant, and the school is dedicated to teaching these state-of-the-art methodologies and technologies, or just approaches to real-world problems, and they teach those in the classroom. And then when you actually start working on your research, you start to apply those things and start to see how they would unfold in the real world. So I think that's a very important aspect of it.
Yeah, I just want to add that they've invested so much in science, and that's huge. Like, it makes a difference that, like, you have these facilities, and it's really great to do research in them. And also, I wanted to add something. If you're doing your undergrad and you're thinking about applying to grad school, I want to reiterate what you said about getting involved. If you're on the end of your classroom, the teachers won't get to know you, right? So think ahead when you're trying to take those reference letters. Like, they need to know you in order to give you a reference. So start getting involved. Like, don't be scared to just like speak up in class. Like, if there's a class that you're very interested in, like, sit in the front, just interact more so that they get to know you, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And one final point to add to that, you just made me think of it. But for anybody who is considering grad school, if you're at the undergrad level, just always remember that the difference between an undergrad student and a grad student is literally a summer. So you really go from undergrad to grad, assuming you do it one after the other. But I think we often pedestalize grad school, and we think of it as this unattainable or very difficult or challenging thing. And sure, it's challenging. We've all had our difficulties, but at the end of the day, we all came from the same place. We all went from that. We all made that leap, and I think that it's a very humanizing thing to remember that. So
I would definitely speak to your TAs, because I have taught a 400 level course right after graduating. So I came out from that classroom to teach that class. And sometimes like you're talking to the students and they're just like, oh, you know so much. And I'm like, oh. Well, last semester I was just you, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
So, yeah, speak to your TAs.
So with that being said, I think we'll maybe turn to the audience and the virtual audience for any questions, if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, I will bring a microphone out. If you have any questions, just raise your hand. That's great. I know there are some questions in the chat on Zoom, and they're more specific to some of the programs that people are applying for. So we've kind of advised them to talk directly to their recruiter, because I know there's a lot of different things. That's
That's perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
And I notice other people are helping each other in the chat, and that's amazing. Okay, there's a question here in the space. I'll bring a microphone.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I'm currently an undergrad at Concordia. I'm thinking of applying to grad school. I heard that if you want to do your PhD in the same school you did your undergrad in, it's better to go do your master's in a different school, different maybe country or something, because that would help your application and show people that you've broadened your horizons. So I don't know if you've heard of that, and what do you think about it?
I can start a little bit with that. I've definitely heard about that. That's why I had that mental question with myself, like, do I leave, do I not leave? But I also heard that it really depends on your supervisor. So the school takes like a second plane here, and if your supervisor is well known and he has a name in the industry that you want to go for, it's okay. Also, all your experiences count. Like, it's not really about the university where you go to, it's about what you do there, right? So you make a name for yourself in the sense of what your experiences are. It's not like it's not going to change you or change the fact that you're going to make a difference if you went to the same university. That's how I saw it.
Yeah, I also had a similar feeling when I was applying for the third time for my PhD, because I had heard that as well, that if you kind of do all 3 degrees at the same universities, do they see it as less? And I also got some information, some advice from my supervisor at the time, and he was the one who told me that it doesn't matter where you go, it matters what you're doing. So if you are going to go to the same university for your bachelor's, master's, and PhD, yeah, those are the 3. So if you go for all 3, then make sure that you're networking. Make sure that you're connecting with other professors, other supervisors, other schools if you can. Try to get some co-authors or collaborators who don't work in the same country or who don't work at the same university. And those will all be things that can support you, because at the end of the day, when you are applying for a job, sure, they're going to look at where you studied and what you studied, but at the end of the day, they're going to look at everything all together. And I can't imagine that having the same university would be a strike against if you're getting a grad degree. And another thing to that point is that I think that it's important to also broaden your horizons within the program. So if you are doing your bachelor's and you have a professor that you're working with at your bachelor's, and then you work with them at your master's and your PhD, then it's the same stream all the way through. So in my case, in my undergrad, I was in a completely different faculty. In my master's, I worked with one supervisor, and then in my PhD, I completely switched and worked with another supervisor. So there are other ways, even within the same university, to kind of diversify your experience. I don't know if anybody else had comments?
Yeah, I can add also, if you're concerned about that, but Concordia is your top option, or Concordia is your only option, or for whatever reason you want to stay at Concordia anyways, then most supervisors will have connections at other institutions, and you'll have opportunities to apply for funding to do visiting research at other places. Mm-hmm. So even if you're doing 2 or 3 degrees at the same institution, you will have opportunities to still do research at other institutions. So it's not like an end-all be-all of, oh, you did 2 degrees at the same place, never mind. And my perspective has always been that if a job or school is going to deny me for doing 2 degrees at the same institution, then that is not a job or school that I want to be at. I don't know. That's my.
Yeah. No, I think we all have the same sentiment for that one.
And just to add about the collaboration, so at least in research, we do a lot of collaborations with McGill. We do a lot of collaborations with different universities in Canada. So for example, in my lab, which is kind of multidisciplinary because we're in the physics department as well as in biology, we're working with Queen's University. Someone from my lab just spent 4 months in Queen's. And then someone else is just working at McGill the same amount of time that they're working at Concordia. So if you have somewhere that you want to collaborate with, don't be shy to ask your supervisor to reach out because they do have connections. Like the fields they're small, they're like tiny communities.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll also go to conferences and you'll network with other people. And then if you see someone that is doing research that is aligned with your research, you can ask them right straight up, oh, hey, we should do something together. And so I think that that's the most valuable, to make sure that you get yourself out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I hope that answered your question. Were there any other questions from the audience? Or?
There was a question on Zoom from Raha. I had a question just about knowing French language, not knowing, for instance, French languages, and how that might affect your life outside of studying, such as finding a job or something, and maybe your thoughts on that.
Sure.
Yeah, I can lead us off. I think obviously being in Montreal, if you don't understand or know the French language, it will be a disadvantage for you. However, there are plenty of government programs to help you learn the French language. And although it might be a disadvantage for you not knowing the French language, there are still opportunities for you. So don't think that just because you're new here and you might not be the best in French, that's it. I can't get a job. My life, I can't go to the restaurant. I can't do anything because really, it's not the case. It's a very bilingual city, and although they stress French a lot, English is a big part of it as well. So, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just add also that it's not just the government programs, but Concordia also offers French classes to all grad students if they want to learn. But yeah, I honestly wouldn't worry too much about it. I am from here. I am bilingual, and I speak English 90% of the time, even out and about in Montreal. So I don't know that it really, I think people want it to matter, but I don't know that it actually does.
Yeah, I think that at least in the day-to-day, you could get by with a little French. And, Concordia is a very international university. So even within the university, we have tons of resources to help teach students French or give them the resources so that they can improve their French. There are plenty of ways to go about that. Yeah, Anna.
I guess how I would see it is, if you're coming to Concordia for grad school and you don't know French, take it as an opportunity to learn, because you're gonna be here for a little while, and you can use the resources that are free for you to learn French. So instead of seeing it as a disadvantage, I would see it more as an opportunity to engage yourself in a French community and try to speak up more in French. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. Any other questions from the audience? Yeah. Oh, okay. Looks like it's part two.
Hi, I had a question about applications. I'm studying business right now, and I was wondering if you had any tips on how to make your application stand out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think at least for our programs, the business programs, the master's, the PhD, all of them, what they really are assessing is the candidate. And I know that sounds trivial, but what I mean is that they do take this holistic approach that I was talking about, where they look at everything. It doesn't just matter your grades, it doesn't just matter your work experience, it really is everything. So as Tristan pointed out, I think being true to yourself and making your letter as authentic as possible is really the best way to set yourself apart. Speak to your experiences beyond the classroom, beyond the workplace, if you can. Any interests that you have. Just to give a small example, when I was interviewing for the PhD program, they asked me what my interests were outside of school, and I told them, like, I love writing crosswords for the New York Times and submitting them, and that's one of my passions. And I talked about that, and we ended up talking about it in my interview, and you know, everybody kind of got along, and it allowed for me to open up a little more and feel a little more comfortable. So my point with that is, it could be the smallest thing, something that you think nobody needs to know, but it really defines you and describes you. So I think that being true in your application and highlighting your achievements too, you know, that is the time to not gloat or brag, but it's the time to really build yourself up. So be your biggest supporter, be your biggest fan, and write a letter that will make you stand out and make you proud. I think that's the best advice I could give you. And I don't know if Tristan...
Yeah, to add on to that, I think, again, I touched upon it a little bit before, but they want someone that's going to fit into their school, into their program, that's going to add some value. So by being your true authentic self and really highlighting what you can bring to the table, I think is a great way to just make your resume stand out. Along with that, I think, again, the supervisor, you want to choose someone that you had a good relationship with so they can create a good recommendation for you. If you just pick some professor that you had an A in his class, but he doesn't really know you, you might just get some generic letter that he copies and pastes for all his students that got A's. So I think what can really provide value if they can really talk about that relationship and what you did in their classroom. So I would really go to that connection with those past professors, and again, to be true to yourself.
Yeah.
We had another question here.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi.
I had a question for you, and it was, you mentioned that you found it a lot easier to get in, there was like an informality to the interview process with your supervisor, and also then you said that if there was an opportunity that didn't, a job or an institution that didn't like that you had gone to undergrad and graduate at the same place, then maybe those opportunities aren't really ones you want to explore. Are you aware of the extreme privilege which colors that advice?
Yes, absolutely, of course.
Cool.
I mean, yes, and it's the same thing, right? Like I said previously, I took 2 years off, and I was able to do that, and I'm very grateful that I was able to do that. And I absolutely recognize that I am extremely privileged to be able to do that. I've been very lucky and with my choices and etc. And I understand that not everyone has those options. But whether you have those options or not, I think maintaining that mentality of going into interviews as the interviewer and not as the interviewee helps a lot. I think it puts you in a position when you're talking to a supervisor or to a panel that shows them that you are as concerned with whether or not this is a fit as they are. Because what people, what supervisors and what departments want to see is that you'll be a benefit to them. And part of that is that you are concerned about whether or not they will be a benefit to you. Because it's also your career that you're looking out for, if that makes sense.
Do you have another question? Yeah.
I just have a question in terms of the time commitment. Is it doable to continue, let's say, working while pursuing a master's degree, or do you have to devote yourself fully to school?
Good question. I think, yeah, let's start with Tristan.
Sure. So the way I did it, the master's student, at least as a business student, it's a lot of work. We're not going to hide the fact that it's a lot of work. So for me, I work part-time along with my full-time studies. And I thought that was a good balance of being able to bring in some money as well as being able to be a full-time student. I know some students that did both, and it was a lot. And I know also some students we offered to do the program part-time, and they worked full-time at the same time. So there's many options in that regard. But to go back to your question, I do think it's very ambitious to be full-time in both. I know some people have done it, but my advice would be to work more part-time if you want to take a full-time course load?
I would say also it depends on the program. So if you're doing a research-based program and you have funding, they do expect you to put like most of your energy into the program. However, sometimes the funding package is not as much as you need to live, and that truly depends on the person. Like you can't really compare someone to another person that maybe would have the same funding package because people come from different places. But I also work part-time. I'm doing my PhD in biology and I do work part-time because I need to work part-time. So I find that just organizing yourself and staying true to what you need and like speaking clearly to your supervisor, just communicating, that you'll find a balance that works for you. And always make sure to check in with yourself and see if you don't want to burn out, because the moment you burn out, it's a huge step back. So just make sure to check in with yourself.
And just to give you an idea, like a bit of a frame of reference, I always say that like 4 to 5 bachelor's courses is like 3 to 4 masters or 2 to 3 PhD. So most full course loads at the master's level, you'll be taking 3 to 4 classes a semester. Some of those might be a little lighter. Maybe it's just a course that's a lot of reading, so you'll have a lot of readings to do. Others might be you have assignments every week. So depending on the course load, it really could change things. But I would say in general, a full course load, full-time work could be difficult. Part-time work, depending on what you're doing, could also be difficult, but definitely more manageable part-time. So
just make sure that both your supervisor and your work are aware of the situation and make sure that they're both willing to be flexible.
Right, yeah, absolutely. No problem. Thank you for your questions.
Did we have any other questions here in the space? Oh, yep.
So I'm not currently applying to masters, but I'm thinking about it, and I am kind of confused on how to narrow down what I want to specifically study. I feel like every single year I'm like interested in something else, and I'm like, oh, I'm sure I want to go research that, but then I take a different, like a new course, and I'm like, wait, no, this is more interesting. So I want to know what helped you narrow down what you wanted to research.
Sure. I could start with that one. I'll also just mention one of the pieces of advice that the recruiter gave me is make sure you know what you want to apply into when you do apply, because switching in a bachelor's might be a little easier, but at the master's level, switching programs could be very difficult because it's usually switching faculties and there's a lot more hoops to jump through to switch. So, but in my experience, I was studying math in my undergrad, right? So it was very theoretical, basically no practical application. So in my case, I was looking for something that would give me the opportunity to extend it towards industry, but also remain academic. And in all honesty, I was looking through the programs. I came across supply chain. It aligned with a lot of my interests when I was in math, so there was some overlap there. It was something that I wasn't familiar with. This was right before COVID too, so supply chain wasn't even a buzzword at the time. And that's ultimately what made me come down to my decision, was just finding something that was an application that I was even remotely interested in, and then going into it, now it's my whole life, and it's become my research interest. It's become everything. So it just goes to show, even though you might not think it's something tangible at the time, or you might not enjoy researching it, once you actually get there, you'll find your niche. So that was my experience. I don't know if you guys could talk to it.
I could also add that it really does depend on the opportunities you have in hand. And I kind of just tried to take the opportunity that will bring me more of what I'm interested in one, let's say. So I am doing research in a multidisciplinary area, which gives me the opportunity to move around and to kind of just explore those different ideas that I want to explore, right? So look into your opportunities and see from there which one is willing to give you more of that freedom, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's my take on that.
I had a similar difficulty when applying for grad school as well. I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to focus my attention in physics. But what I found helped me decide a lot was reaching out not just to potential supervisors, but reaching out to grad students who are doing the research that I would be doing. Because there's a big difference between something you're interested in learning and something you're interested in researching. I can give an example. Growing up, the reason I went into physics was to do astrophysics. So when I graduated from my bachelor's, I was looking into doing grad school in astrophysics. And after having discussed what that means with a lot of grad students who are doing research in that field, I quickly found out that I would actually hate it. So I think understanding what it means to research a topic and the differences between learning and enjoying that topic and actually researching it can be a good maybe pathway to go to. Talking to researchers in that field is a good place to start, maybe.
Does that answer your question? Yeah. Perfect. So are there any other questions from the audience on Zoom? No? No. That being said, thank you all for attending and thanks for listening to us today. We'll be around in the meantime after the call for those who are here if you wanted to talk, and I'll let Douglas conclude.
James, thank you. Thank you all for coming in. It's so great to listen to just have your perspectives, and definitely in this contest. Also, just want to thank everyone joining us here in the space for your comments and questions. There's been a lot of really great chat going on in the Zoom, and I just want to remind everyone that for the specific related questions, that contacting your recruiter is really the best way to find out things around admissions and timelines, etc. But there's been some good information sharing, and that's nice to see. Okay, thank you everyone. We're going to close up the Zoom and the live stream now. It'll remain available on our YouTube channel. You can revisit it there. Don't forget that you can search in the transcript to find key moments related to questions. And I wish you a fantastic weekend. All right, stay warm.